we could have the roll call?
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 6, Audrey Miller is not present this evening. Division 5, Robert Harris.
Here.
Division 3, Jay Tremblay.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy.
Here.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 4, George Lane.
Yep. Here.
General Manager Knutson.
Here.
I don't believe we have our general counsel present. No general counsel tonight, and Holly Hughes present.
Yeah, thank you. Next item, if we have public listening in, we'd always like to hear who might be with us right there. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, public comments. If anybody would like to address the board, the item is not on the agenda. Now's the time to do so. We'll move on to item number 6A, adoption of the agenda. 6A1, a motion would be in order.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move we adopt the agenda.
We have a motion by Dr. Parrish. Second. We have a second. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary?
Robert Harris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay. Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Yep, and motion carried. That'll bring us on to basically the reason for this meeting is Finance Committee report. And Director Dias is one of this committee, and Director Dias has worked hard along with Director Parrish. And we've had meetings before this, before it goes to the general board. But at this time, we'll turn it over to Director Dias.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met with staff Tuesday morning to discuss our proposed budget for fiscal year 2025-26 and 2 associated board resolutions, one for the budget itself with a water rate adjustment and another for setting our property tax rates for the same period. We heard a very thorough presentation by Matt and Teresa and asked them to provide the same presentation to the full board tonight. Furthermore, when we reach that point in the agenda, our committee recommends the full board approve the budget and property tax rates as presented in the packet. So I will now ask Matt and Teresa to make the presentations.
All right. Thank you, Director Dias. Good evening, board members. So as Director Dias said, we went through this presentation with the Finance Committee earlier this week. As you know, a couple months back, we laid out a budget schedule where we presented different items that were included or are included in the budget to the various committees. That kind of laid the framework and a lot of the assumptions that went into this year's budget. So Teresa and I will tag team the presentation today. I'll start by giving some background and going through the assumptions that were built into the budget. So we'll start with reminding everyone what AVAC's mission statement is. Mission of AVAC is to deliver reliable, sustainable, and high-quality supplemental water to the region in a cost-effective and efficient manner. That's always a good reminder for the staff and the board to keep us focused on what our role and mission is here in the Valley. Down below, it's also a good reminder for everyone that AVAC is a pass-through and cost recovery agency. And what that means is any revenues that are collected in excess of our expenses or costs are used to offset future costs for the agency. And then on the flip side, any costs that are in excess of the agency's revenues can and will be collected in subsequent years to balance our revenues and expenses. So today's goal is, Director Dias kind of laid it out. We have 2 resolutions we're seeking approval for. One would set the annual tax rate of the agency, which we're not recommending to change. The second one is to approve a resolution adopting the annual budget and also set a water rate adjustment for the upcoming, or for fiscal year 25-26. Down below, you can see some items that will allocate funds for out of this year's budget. Big one being the state water project cost, allocates funds for the fixed costs on the state water project, all of our operational expenses to operate the agency, including the state water project variable costs, power, chemical use, supplies, services, and all of our insurance programs for our property and liability. Also includes personnel expenses, all inclusive of salaries, health insurance, payroll taxes, workers' comp, insurance, etc. There's also some money allocated for asset replacement and capital expenses to make sure all of our plants and pump stations and pipelines maintain their serviceability and that we're keeping everything tip-top shape. Allocates money for paying the annual principal and interest payments on our AVEC's outstanding bonds. These are not the state water project bonds. These are AVEC issued water revenue bonds and renewable energy bonds. Also allocates $10 million towards water banking so that we have funds allocated for any surplus water we have through the state water project. We have funds to move that water through the state water project and bank it here in the local groundwater basin. So some of the key assumptions that go into developing the budget. Some of these have been approved and presented to the board previously, but includes the DWR statement of charges for our fixed cost on the state water project. It includes the board approved personnel expenses, inclusive of health insurance and retirement. And it also incorporates the recently approved 2.9% cost of living adjustment for employee salaries. Also includes the board approved memberships and state water contractor dues. The board previously approved our chemical bids and chemical costs for the upcoming fiscal year. Includes some estimated asset replacement and capital expenses, and then incorporates some revenue generated due to the High Desert Water Bank operating the High Desert Water Bank and getting reimbursed by Metropolitan Water District. We will bring at a later date the operation and maintenance budget for the High Desert Water Bank. We're still working on that with Metropolitan, but it has no impact on the budget we're presenting today. The big key assumption is how much water do we anticipate selling to our customers. We're projecting 40,000 acre feet. That's very consistent to what we've seen the last couple years. And another big assumption is how much imported water we're going to deliver versus recovered stored water from the basin. So we're estimating a split of 34,000 acre feet of state water project supplies and 6,000 acre feet of recovered stored imported water supplies from our various banking facilities. Another key assumption is our outstanding debt. You can see a summary down the table there. We have 2 bond issues that are outstanding. We have to make those annual principal and interest payments, which total just over $8 million between the 2 components. And then you can see in the far right column shows our outstanding balance on those 2 bond issues. And those 2 bond issues, the earliest that we can consider paying off early or refunding those would be June of 2026. We'll switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about our tax rate. As you know, each year around this time of year, AVEC has to set its special water tax rate that we collect on all properties within the AVEC service area. The current rate is, it works out to collecting $70.49 for every $100,000 of assessed value. So that's the current formula. You can see the table on the left shows the last 5 years of tax revenue that tax rate generated for the agency. Most recent one is just under $40 million. And you can see the percent change year over year listed there as well. So as you know, we've seen in recent years a steady increase in the assessed value of all the properties, and that accounts for that change in increased revenue. It's not due to AVEC increasing the tax rate. So the tax rate's held flat, but the assessed value has increased. Then you can see the table on the right shows what our annual budgeted statement of charges are for DWR. And the most recent one is about a little over $36 million. So that's the minimum amount that we need to generate through the tax revenue. And you can see it's fairly close to what last year's revenue was generated through the property tax. So our recommendation, you'll see that coming up in the future slides, recommendation is to hold our tax rate consistent to what it's been in recent years and not change our tax rate. That ensures that we're going to collect enough revenue through the property tax to cover AVAC's fixed cost on the State Water project. And you may ask why the big jump from last year's statement of charges to this year's. It's about a $4 million increase, and that's attributed to the board approved participation in the Delta Conveyance project over the next 2 years. If you remember, the board approved funding for the design efforts for 26 and 27. So that's roughly half is collected from DWR in 26, and then the other half in 27. Little history. This chart shows the history of revenue generated from water sales. So we're in 2025. What is that? Probably over 32 million collected in 2025 from water sales. You can see the variations in history has to do with the various droughts that we've gone through in recent history. We probably all remember the 2014, 2015 drought. We saw a sharp decline in water sales due to the drought and watering restrictions. And then there was some rebound starting in 2016 through 2020, 2021. But then we had another drought in 22 and 23. So that was the decrease in water sales you can see there. And then we've been rebounding a little bit ever since then. Next chart shows history of our AVAC's operating costs or expenses. Steady increase. A lot of this is just due to inflation, cost of living adjustments for salaries. If you look at the difference between 2024 and 2025, it was just over 2% increase in operating expenses. So AVAC historically has done a pretty good job of controlling expenses. A lot of the increases that we see is, like I said, due to inflation and increases in chemical costs, power costs, etc. We've been very conservative as far as any additions to staff for the agency. We don't try to hire too many excess staff members, and we do allow work with what we have. Water rate adjustment to support the fiscal year 24 or 25-26 budget. If you remember back in 2023, AVAC aligned our water rate adjustment with the budget process. Before that, the water rate was on a calendar year, and then our budget was always a fiscal year. So we thought it was wise to make that shift and look at our water rates as part of the budget process. And that seems to be working out pretty good. Also back in 2023, we did a financial study and rate plan. And that rate plan that was approved by the board in 2023 laid out 3 years of water rate adjustments. And the recommendation at that time was to increase the rates 7.5% each year, year over year. So the board did implement 7.5% that first year. The second year, based on how things looked in the budget, the board approved 5% versus the 7.5%. So that was a direct savings to our customers on water purchases. And then this year, we're giving the board a couple of different options. We went through this with the Water Rate Committee, and they are recommending, as well as staff, a 3% adjustment to this year's water rate. And a few reasons why we feel comfortable recommending 3% versus the planned 7.5% is we're seeing lower inflation rate as compared to prior years, especially back when we put together the financial plan. There were some higher estimates on what inflation was going to do. We also are seeing a lower than anticipated state water project variable cost. This is the cost per acre foot to move the water through the state water project. Our current cost is just over $200 per acre foot. I think our plan was assuming that would be in the $250 per acre foot range. So we're seeing that savings, and we'd like to pass that on to our customers. We're seeing the value and savings of paying off the variable rate bonds that we had a couple years ago. That was $45 million that we were paying interest on each year. So we're now avoiding those interest payments. We have a very healthy volume of banked and stored water supplies in the valley here at our various banking facilities. Interest income is up than what we projected it back in 2023 as part of the financial plan. So those rates seem to stabilize. Doesn't seem like there's any significant decreases planned in the near future. And lastly, you'll see that we're maintaining sufficient water or revenue fund level targets based on our reserve policy. So we continue to maintain healthy reserves. So that's those are kind of the reasons why staff and Water Rate Committee is recommending 3%, and also the Finance Committee as we went through this with them earlier this week. But we are going to show you two options, 7.5% and 3%. This is just a chart that shows the history of water rate adjustments. So you can see we did a few 7.5% adjustments. During COVID, the board approved a 2.5%. That was less than what was planned. They did follow that by a 5% in 2022. And like I said earlier, the first of the 3-year rate plan, we did 7.5. Last year, we did 5, and 3% is recommended for this budget. So now we'll switch gears now that I gave you a lot of the history and some of the assumptions that went into the budget. Teresa's going to get into the numbers and go through the difference between a 7.5% rate adjustment versus a 3%.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, directors. So this slide looks at the operating revenues and the operating expenses. And the first column is using a 7.5% rate increase, and the second column is using a 3% rate increase. And the only difference on this slide is the amount of the water sales between the two different rate increases. And as a reminder, the operating revenues and expenses related are revenues and expenses related to the core operations of the agency, which is delivering water to customers. And the operating expenses are recovered through the water rate. So water sales are budgeted at 33.8 with a 7.5% rate increase and 32.4 with a 3% rate increase. And the difference between the two is $1.4 million. The water transfers and exchanges of $3.2 million. This is revenue associated with the 1,700 acre feet of nickel water supply, which is just over $3 million. And the leased production right to LA County of $210,000. The High Desert Water Bank reimbursements and fees, this is just the reimbursement from Metropolitan for staff time on the capital project. And the property tax revenue of 6.8 million. This is the portion of the property tax revenue that we receive that can go towards administration and operations. So with the 3% rate increase, operating revenues are 42.6 million. Okay, so moving on to the operating expenses, water purchases of 11.2 million. And this is based, as Matt mentioned, it's based on 34,000 acre feet of state water project deliveries and 6,000 acre feet of recovered banked water. And it also includes the cost of the 1,700 acre feet of the Nickel water supply. Water delivery and treatment of 3.5 million. This includes the pumping and treatment and chemical costs. The maintenance and supplies of 1.8 million. This includes equipment maintenance, building and grounds maintenance, supplies for operations, lab, admin offices, and safety. Fees and services of almost 3.9 million. This includes utilities like the phone, electricity, disposal. It also includes legal fees, engineering services, consultant and IT services, memberships, auditing services, and insurance premiums. Travel and transportation of 504,000. This includes fuel and maintenance for the agency vehicles. It includes the vehicle lease expense and travel expenses. Personnel expense of 10.3 million. This includes wages as well as health insurance premiums, retirement plan contributions, continuing education and training, workers' compensation premiums, and payroll taxes. The other expense of 95,000, this is for the water master fees and the USGS groundwater survey cost. And then depreciation of 9.2 million. This is a non-cash expense, which expenses the cost of capital assets over their useful life and is required by GASB number 34. So total operating expenses with a 3% rate increase is 40.5 million. Okay. So this is the non-operating revenues and expenses of the budget, and the same two columns, the 7.5% and the 3% rate increases. And the only difference on this slide is the total revenues and the net revenue down at the bottom. Okay, so the non-operating revenues include property tax revenues, and this is the portion that pays the fixed state water project costs. The investment income of 3.8 million, other income of 1.4 million, and this includes the reimbursement for state water project costs from Tejon and the water master reimbursements for staff time and some other miscellaneous revenues, and then lab income. So the total non-operating revenues are 44.9 with the 3% increase, and the non-operating expenses include the state water contract of 36.2 million and the bond interest payments of 1.7. And this 1.7 million includes the anticipated IRS rebate, so it's less than what you saw on that previous slide. So total non-operating expenses are 38 million. And so the budget using a 3% rate increase anticipates net revenue of 8.9 million, which will go towards reserves to maintain reserve level targets and cover capital costs. Okay, so for 25-26, there's a total of 11 million in capital improvement and replacement projects anticipated, and operations and engineering will continue with the current practice of bringing projects over 25,000 to the committee and board for approval. Okay, so this slide takes a look at the impact of the 25-26 budget and what what the impact is on the reserves. So the same columns, the 7.5% and the 3% rate increase. And we'll start with the cash balance at June 30 of 25 of 169.2 million. We'll add the net revenues that you saw on the previous slide of 8.9, add back depreciation of 9.2 million, since that's a non-cash expense. And then we're going to subtract out the capital and IT expenditures of 9.8 and 1.2 million, and that's the 11 million from the previous slide. We're going to subtract out the debt principal payments of 5.7. And then also we're going to subtract 10 million, which has been allocated for water banking. And at the current rate, that's about 50,000 acre feet. So we estimate cash reserves to be about 160.5 at June 30 of 26. Okay. And then this slide takes a look at the reserve fund policy targets and where we expect to be within those targets at the end of next year. So the reserve fund policy establishes 4 reserve funds, and the first is the operating reserve, and the minimum target and the maximum targets for this fund are the same, of 12 months of annual budgeted operating expenses, not including depreciation. So this is 31.3 million for both. The second is the drought contingency reserve. The minimum target is 7% of annual budgeted water sales revenue, or 2.2 million. And the maximum target is 20%, or 6.4 million. The third is the capital improvement and replacement reserve. The minimum target is next year's anticipated capital costs of the 11 million, and the maximum target is the next 5 years of capital costs anticipated, and that's 116.9 million, and that amount does include the cost of the SNP project. The fourth is the State Water Contract Reserve Fund. The minimum target for this is 50% of the annual state water project cost, or 18.1 million, and the maximum cost is 100%, or 36.2 million. And then the fifth is the post-employment benefit liability reserve, which is for future expected health insurance benefits for eligible retirees. And the minimum and maximum target is the same at 100% of the liability amount based on the actuarial study. And that's the study we have done every year for our audit. And that amount is the 7.2 million. So the total minimum amount that of the reserve target, 70 million, and the maximum 198.2 million. And down at the bottom, our estimated cash reserve balance at June 30, 26 is 160.5 million. So we're within those target minimum and maximum amounts.
Answer that one.
Yeah, a lot.
And second one, Matt, is remember years ago when we didn't raise rates at all, and then a couple different water agencies went ahead and raised their rates, and we were sitting there going, something about that doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
But
So AVEC hasn't, just to correct some, if you look back at the history, the chart that I showed, this one. So this shows recent years of rate adjustments. I think, Gary, you might be referring to that calendar year 2021.
yeah, it was during COVID.
Yeah, we only did 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah, we planned on doing a 7.5, but because of COVID, few directors thought it'd be prudent to do 2.5%.
How did we end up doing on that? Because we took a little heat as directors doing that.
Doing the lower percentage?
Yeah, it worked out okay.
Yeah, it worked out fine.
But what I was disappointed in, the agencies didn't go far. You know, they just went ahead and raised their rates.
Oh, yeah.
It just kind of, and it ended up in the front page of the paper too.
Yeah.
So on AVEC.
Yeah. Yeah, they each of the retailers has their own process of how to go through and do a rate calculation.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yep.
Any more questions or comments?
Mr. President, I just had one comment back to Gary. The year we did the 2.5%, Gary, that was, I think we had a special request on a letter from Supervisor Catherine Barger, and it was pushed by Waterworks 40, if memory serves me right. And I'm pretty sure Waterworks did not raise their rates above that, and they were pushing real hard to keep rates down during COVID. So just a little bit of background on that discussion that we had.
Right. Well, I won't name the agency that went ahead and put it in.
Oh, go ahead, it doesn't matter, we're all friends.
But I know it was there.
Yeah.
And that does too.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Waterworks, so I just wanna.
Right, you're probably right about, well, you are right about that.
Always like to protect Waterworks when I can.
If there's no further questions or comments, the board order would be.
Mr. President, this is Drew.
You, Drew.
Yeah, I just want to comment when we were reviewing the different rate options in the water rate committee, you know, we had number one, I think staff's done a great job, but, you know, our commitment was to look to see what's the lowest, most responsible rate we can do for the customers, and looking at how things have been done in the past, I think that's speaks a lot to Avek, and particularly those of you who've been on the board longer.
Good job for the committee's part. So, board order 7A2, we have a resolution R25-21 running a recommendation of the tax rate, and it's stated, so a motion would be in order.
Also move, this is Keith.
Director Dias, we have a motion.
I'll second
We have a second from?
Yeah.
Okay. Jay?
Jay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary, give a roll call.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yeah.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Good job, everyone. Motion carried. That'll bring us on to our next item. Is there any further? Everybody alluded to that, a good report. And is there any more questions or comments as far as the budget, the 3% is recommended?
Yeah, and President Lane, we do have one more agenda item, 7A3, to adopt.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
is that what you're referring to?
that's what I'm on, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Is there any more questions or comments? Okay, board on, we have a resolution 25-22. If there's no further questions or comments, motion would be in order.
President, I'll move approval.
Director Mercy, we have a motion.
Second.
Second by Director Van Dam. Okay, going once, going twice, and we'll go to Holly for,
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
yes. Motion carried. Great job for the committees and staff. And so, I guess moving on, we've got a couple of other items. It's nice to have that behind us.
Yeah, for sure. And it's nice doing kind of all three items together, the tax rate, the water rate, and the budget.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, this might not be in order, but the general manager's report, on
All
the
right.
agenda.
Thank you.
You've already done a big report.
Yeah, very short report. Just, as GMO, I just want to say thank you to Teresa Yates, and kudos for all her hard work throughout the year, keeping all the finances in order. It makes this process much easier, and you can see the benefits of that tonight. So,
It's much,
job.
much easier than it used to be
yeah,
when I first became a member of the board.
a lot of that's due to Teresa.
Yeah.
So I just have one slide, upcoming events and schedule. I am going to take a few days off next week, next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, take my daughter back to college in Idaho. So Peter will be here, and I'll be available by phone, so if you need anything. And then just a reminder, we have our AB 1234 ethics training scheduled for Tuesday, the 19th of August from 3 to 5. Attorney Markman will be here in person giving that training. And then, we do have one director scheduled to attend the CSDA annual conference in late August. And that's all I have for tonight.
Okay,
Short,
any
sweet.
questions for manager? And we don't have, there's no attorney present, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, we'll move on to request for future agenda items. We'll move on to item number 12, adjournment. Would we have a motion?
Mr. President, I'll move we adjourn.
We have a motion from Director Mercy. We have a second. We have a second from Director Ferris. No further questions or comments? Madam Secretary?
Robert Harris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank-
Congratulations, Mr. President, for a very efficient, quick run meeting.
Oh, good. It's not always that way, is it?